found out my coworker was trying to get me fired by fabricating a paper trail, and a random act of habit saved everything. I'm a project coordinator at a mid-sized logistics company. I've worked there for 6 years, never had a disciplinary issue, earned 2 performance awards, and genuinely liked my job. That all nearly collapsed in a single week because of someone I considered a work friend. Marcus and I started around the same time. We'd grab lunch occasionally, complain about the same broken processes, cover each other's deadlines when life got complicated. Not close friends, but the kind of colleague you trust without thinking about it. So when my manager called me into a closed-door meeting on a Tuesday afternoon and told me HR had received multiple complaints about my conduct, I sat there genuinely confused. The complaints described a pattern of hostile communication. Allegedly, I'd been sending dismissive, unprofessional emails to vendors. Supposedly, I'd missed 3 critical handoffs in the past month and blamed the errors on junior staff. According to the documentation HR had received, I'd created a hostile working environment for newer team members who were afraid to escalate issues to management because of me. I felt the blood drain from my face. None of it had happened. My manager, to her credit, told me this was preliminary, and I had the opportunity to respond. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed emails, all from my work address, all with my signature block, all completely fabricated. The writing style was close but slightly off, like someone who had studied my emails and tried to replicate the tone without quite landing it. The vendor responses attached to them treated the emails as real, but when I looked closer, the vendor email addresses had small misspellings. Domains that looked right at a glance but were 1 letter off. Someone had created fake vendor accounts and fake email threads, then printed them and submitted them physically to HR to avoid any digital verification trail. I asked my manager to give me 24 hours before any formal action. She agreed reluctantly. I went home that night and couldn't eat. I sat at my kitchen table going back through 6 years of being careful, being professional, being the person who stayed late to fix other people's mistakes without making it a moment. And someone had spent what must have been weeks constructing a false version of me to hand to HR. The next morning, I came in early and went straight to our IT department. I asked them to pull the server logs for my email account for the past 60 days. This is something employees can request for their own accounts, and I'd never had reason to before. The IT lead, a quiet guy named Paul, who I'd helped navigate an onboarding issue 2 years back, pulled the logs within the hour. My sent folder and the server logs didn't match. The emails in the HR folder had timestamps that existed in the server logs, but the actual content recorded server side was completely different. Someone had printed fake emails using real timestamps from my account, banking on the assumption that HR would never cross-reference physical printouts against server data. The actual emails sent from my address at those times were routine, professional, exactly what you'd expect. Paul looked at me over his monitor and said quietly that this was significant. I asked him one more thing. I asked whether our system logged failed login attempts or unusual access patterns on employee accounts. He checked. There had been 6 login attempts to my account from an internal terminal over the previous 5 weeks, all outside business hours, all unsuccessful because I use a long randomized password I'd set up after a security training seminar 2 years ago. A habit I developed for no reason other than that the trainer made it sound important. The terminal ID was traceable. It belonged to Marcus. I went back to my manager with Paul and a printed summary of everything. I watched her face shift from skeptical to stunned to something harder as she read through it. She called HR immediately. Within 2 hours, Marcus had been pulled into a meeting he didn't come out of for a long time. What came out over the following days was something I hadn't seen coming even after I knew he was responsible. Marcus had applied for a senior coordinator role that had quietly been discussed at the management level, a role no one had officially announced yet.